his balls on the table, guaranteeing a win in Big D. Actually, well, for this week, it's Little D, because they got the mini carrot. You know why Big Balls Doug did that, right? You know why he did that. Because Jason Garrett, he's got little marbles. He's got little balls. He put his balls on the table. And Jason Garrett isn't going to be able to handle it. It's Cowboys week, baby. Brendan Albert is here, as is Mike Skolsky, trying to contain their laughter. I just kind of went there and just, I don't know, just pure stupidity.
Well, I'm glad to be back after missing last week. Unfortunately, the game did not live up to what we hoped. But I mean,
you missed a good week to miss.
I missed a good week to miss. I mean, we can break that. We'll break that all down tonight. But yeah, that was not what we hoped to see. So I'm excited to talk about it, but was not exciting to watch last weekend. That's for sure.
Coach Pete doesn't get released if he doesn't back up his talk this week, does he? I'm just kidding. I'm obviously just kidding and making a Zach Brown joke here, but I think it is kind of comical that we talk about a player who, frankly, guys, he said everything that I think any of us would have said. It just didn't work out the way that he had hoped. And I still think if you play the Vikings this week, his statement still holds true. But you get Coach Pete talking, and it's like you just released a guy maybe for his play, maybe for his talk, and now your head coach is talking. I just kind of think it's kind of a weird sequence of events.
Do you know why Zach Brown got released? Because after the game, he acted like a bitch. That's why he got released.
That's fair.
Statement cut. That's what that was. And I loved what Doug Peterson did. I loved everything about it because everybody in Philadelphia freaking out about the Minnesota game. Well, what happened? It takes all the pressure off the players. It takes all the pressure off the team, off of that game. That game is now forgotten about. It's in the rearview mirror because it's Dallas week now. All the focus is on Dallas, and all the pressure is on Doug Peterson, him and squarely on him. And I love everything about this. So, what are you guys' thoughts on kind of what he said?
I mean, it takes a lot of guts. I mean, like you said, we're putting a lot of players under the microscope after last week's game. So for him to come up and put himself in the crosshairs, I think that's just kind of what a leader does. I mean, he did kind of backtrack it a little bit, but I mean, the statement's already out there, the quote's already out there. It doesn't matter what he says from now on. So I mean, he put himself in the crosshairs is what you want to see, especially when we're about to pick apart a lot of the things we didn't like this past week.
I did think it was a little weird. You're right, Skullman, that he kind of walked it back a little. I don't know. That got kind of the one thing I wasn't a huge fan of. I would love to be able to go all in, right? I mean, just go on. That's what I said. And
once he said it, you might as well embrace it at that point.
Exactly.
Once the quote's out there.
I'm with you there, definitely.
But here's the one thing I appreciate. Adrian, you said this, and it's 100% true. He reminded everyone in the greater Philadelphia area and all Eagles fans across the country that, hey, we win this game, we're in first place in the division. Yes, that said, you're still 4-3, but we're first place in the division. So yeah, I kind of look at it. It's like when you're in a locker room, for example, and everything stinks, and you just spray a whole bunch of Febreze. Well, it smells a little bit better, but the team's not good. The locker room still stinks, and that's kind of what would be kind of looking like. Yeah, you could be first place in the division, but there's still a lot of holes in the Eagles team, even if they do win this game this weekend.
Yeah, so that's kind of the next question here. What are we looking at with this team? So we're 6 games in. They're 3-3. After the first month, I was like, well, it's the first month. That's kind of, it's every team kind of starts slow the first month if you really think about it. But the mistakes are still continuing. So what is this team right now?
This team's just struggling to find an identity right now. I mean, there's just a lot. We're counting on a lot of young players to step up, or a lot of backup players from the previous years. We've had our share of injuries, and there's certain places that we just either people aren't stepping up, or we just clearly don't have the talent. I mean, we don't have a receiver that can stretch the field. Our defensive line is not getting. Our front four is not getting pressure on their own, and our secondary obviously is in shambles right now. And there's a lot to worry about from the talent perspective, because we talked about how we're one of the older teams in the NFL and how they haven't been drafting great. So, I mean, there's a lot to worry about. I mean, there's still time for people to turn the corner. There's still time for Howie Roseman to bring in people. But as of right now, I mean, you have to be worried by several key position groups.
I mean, look, let's call it what it is here, fellas. If any of us knew what this team was, any of us would be working on ESPN right now, because there is no confidence that you can say definitively what this team is outside of Carson. Everything else is a giant question mark, really. I mean, okay, right tackle, center, really good. Rest of the offensive line, still good, but hasn't performed up to what I think any of our expectations were. Alshon's playing really well. Zach Ertz went missing in action. Minnesota took him away last week. So, Adrian, I think the biggest issues with this team, Skolsky talked about it, pass rush. I mean, we talked about this at the start of the season, and there's no one coming back from the injured reserve or the injured list that's suddenly going to make this team better. I've never seen Eagles fans be so excited about seeing Jalen Mills come back, but here we are today. But we don't have anyone coming back from the edge. So that's my biggest concern, Adrian. And I think where we are is a team that has to control the ball. We have to be a team that wins the time of possession. Even if that means lower scoring games, that probably helps you because it means your defense sees less snaps.
All right, so I'll say this is my big concern right now. It's red zone defense and the start of games. So for the fourth time in 6 games, the defense let up a touchdown on the opening drive. And if you look at last year, because passing yards per game, this Eagles defense always allows the yards. But when you get in the red zone, they normally clamp down. Easy for me to say. Last year they were ranked dead first. I'll go with it. Dead first in red zone defense. This year they're 18th. Red zone defense, pass rush, very important. They're not getting after the quarterback. PFF is still saying though they're 6th. D-line is 6th. That's what PFF is saying. I don't know what that means with the pressure rate, but they're averaging less than a sack a game if you take away the Jets game. So we're not seeing what we've seen over recent years. I'm seeing Kirk Cousins take deep 7-step drops, play actions. He's got nobody around him. Whereas prior years, you would see teams try to get the ball out quick intentionally because the pass rush would get to the quarterback so quickly. But now I'm seeing opposing offenses have more of a variety in their passing game, taking deeper drops, and that to me is a big issue, maybe even more so than the secondary.
So let's go to. I see a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, the D line is an issue. Our pressure rates are around the same," which they are. If you look at them between last year and this year, the pressure rates are the same, but you're talking about defensive pressure rates, not defensive.
Yeah,
let me get to there. Let me get to my point.
What is the stat for PFF mean?
Hold on.
Because this is the stat that all the
no.
give out.
I'm getting there. Let me get to my point.
All right, go ahead.
This is Football Outsider. So notice how I said defensive pressure rate, not defensive line pressure rate, and that's because we're blitzing this year at 27.3%, which is about middle of the pack compared to 16% last year, which was dead last in the NFL. Right. If you remember, Jim Schwartz bumped up the blitz last year. So you look at 2017, the blitz rate was even lower than that. Jim Schwartz's philosophy is to get pressure with the front four and to have the rest of the guys drop back in coverage. So with our front four not getting pressure, he's blitzing more. And with the lack of talent in the secondary, that's less people that can help out in coverage. So it's like a double whammy. There's less people in coverage, and the people in coverage aren't talented. So it's just a complete like cluster right now.
I'm glad that was explained because it makes complete sense now. I'm like, how are they 6th in pressure rate? Because I was thinking like they were grading the D line. I'm like, I'm not seeing them get after the quarterback consistently. No. What are they talking about? Especially early in games. I mean, even Minnesota, they started getting after it when it was 24-3. Great, it's 24-3.
Look, we can stop the show right here. Skolsky just summed the whole thing up. I mean, it's 100%. You have Jim Schwartz, whose career has been a guy who said, hey, invest in the front four. I'll get it done there, and you guys can drop 7 in coverage. He has to do something that he's not comfortable with. So naturally, when people want to point blame at him, I'm always like, you realize he's doing something that he doesn't want to have to. Right now, the roster isn't constructed to put him in a winnable situation. So it's just making the weaknesses of the defensive backs that much more glaring. Because let's be honest here, it's not like there was 10 different defensive backs the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl versus today. A lot of those guys are still on the same roster here. Now, obviously, some of those guys maybe took a regression. I'll give you that. But to Skolsky's point, it all comes down to getting pressure with front four opposing to having to dramatically increase your blitz percentage.
All right, so the next topic I want to get into is the slow starts. And a lot of blame is being cast on the offense because not only is the offense not scoring, but because they didn't score last year. But let me explain to you something here. All right, I already said it. 4 of the first 6 games, there's been a touchdown scored in the opening drive from the opposing team. So these opening drives are also taking away a lot of the clock. So what we're seeing is the opposing team is getting the ball, taking like 6 to 7 minutes off the clock, scoring touchdowns, and then when the Eagles offense gets it, they pretty much go 3 and out. And then the opposing team gets the ball back, and then they take more time off the clock. And by the time the Eagles get the second possession, it's the second quarter. And that's how they're getting off to these slow starts. So Doug was asked this week during his press conference, hey, do you want to actually take the ball first? Because normally that's not his philosophy. And he was thinking about, like, yeah, that's something that we might do this week. Because the offense right now, you could tell last week they wanted to run the football. They really did. They wanted to establish it. But they got down so far behind that they had to get away from their game plan. And this has been the story all year. They get down, the opposing offense is getting off to these hot starts, and then Doug's game plans are pretty much thrown out the window.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you said there is true. And I mean, I think a lot comes back to what we talked about in previous week. We put too much stock of having only Deshaun Jackson being the only receiver that can stretch the field. I mean, we're pretty one-dimensional right now. I mean, you look at last year once Mike Wallace got hurt. You look at 2016 when we didn't have a deep threat. All of our receiving threats are either possession receivers or people who work primarily out of the slot. So without someone on the outside who can stretch the field, they're starting to focus on the middle of the field. They're starting to stack the box. Maybe Brendan can go in more detail how lack of a deep threat can affect offenses. But I mean, it's really making us one-dimensional. When the safety has to be back in coverage, I mean, that's one less guy. I mean, that gives the running back one less guy in the box for the running back. I mean, that opens up things for Zach Ertz, opens up things for Nelson Aguilar. So I mean, a lot of our success on offense is just Carson making magic essentially with some of the throws he's been doing, because he's been buying time, allowing them to create separation, because they're not really doing a great job of creating separation on their own. So it's a really tough situation. It's going to be tough to run the ball. And that's why it might not be a bad idea to get a separate deep threat. I'm not saying trade any high compensation, but just someone that can keep defenses honest as long as Deshaun's out.
And Skolsky, we kind of talked about that a little last week. I know even you and me have had private conversations about Robbie Anderson of the Jets potentially picking back the phone up and asking Joe Douglas, hey, I know you weren't there last year, but you know we were interested in Robbie Anderson. Are you willing to sell him now?
His stock just went way up.
Exactly, right? So this is one of those things where you got to know when to jump on that, because I'm with you, Skull, man. You know, just having that threat in the slot who's a vertical receiver, whether it's Deshaun Jackson, Robbie Anderson, you could insert a name here. It really doesn't matter. What it does is it forces the defense to play instead of one high safety, two high safeties, right? So if you play that two high safety look right now, there we go, there's the camera. Now you're able to have only one-on-one defenders for your tight end. You play that one high, now all of a sudden you can run bracket coverage, meaning you can have the outside linebacker buzz and play everything underneath the out-breaking routes, in-breaking routes for your tight end, your safety plays to cover the top. That's huge. Because when you look at the Eagles, their number one receiving threat is Zach Ertz. And that's fine. It's not a number one receiver. I would say the same thing really about the Chiefs. I still think Kelsey's the number one receiving threat. So it really matters when you need to have a speed guy to keep away that safety and make you play one-on-one against your tight end or guy who play in line more. So I'm with you, Skolsky. I think that's a big issue here. But I talked about this in past shows, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, why do we even have Deshaun Jackson if he's always hurt? Because here's the deal, guys. He's always been hurt. If you're thinking that this is a new thing for Deshaun Jackson, you live under a very big rock. And you probably don't have satellite TV under there, because Deshaun Jackson has never been a guy who's played 16 games. He's always been a guy who's played, around 12. That's just kind of the deal you get with Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, and that goes back to sorry.
Go ahead.
That goes back to getting this roster, the talent on this roster. Like you said, Deshaun's not going to play all those games, so to not to have a contingency plan, especially after last year we saw him fall flat, not due to not having a speed threat. I mean, that goes to Howie, in my opinion. I mean, Torrey Smith, I mean, he didn't put up big numbers, but he did his
just
job.
Run straight, man.
Defenses had to respect him, even though he wasn't, having big monster games like we expect from Deshaun Jackson. Just having that threat opens up so much for the offense.
Well, the good thing is that Deshaun Jackson had his one injury for the season, and he's scheduled to come back. So that is a good thing, and that is going to help out obviously for the Eagles. Now, I think where this really helps out is the 12 personnel packages, and if they really do want to run the ball, which is kind of where the trend is going this year in terms of the NFL. I pulled out a stat yesterday on my Beating Your Bookie show. So teams who are in the top 5 in terms of run pass percentage, who are running the ball most, they are 21-7 so far this year. Teams in the top 5 passing the ball. Now, obviously, some of these teams are going to be passing because they're throwing from behind, but 7-22, and the Chiefs are in that range. I think the Rams are like 6th on that list. So running the ball, I think, is going to be really important. As we just lost Brendan. No. Oh, my God, I'm going to cry. So, yeah, his connection was a little bit. Oh, well, we'll see if we can get him. Okay, we got him back. Because I lost.
My bad.
Yeah, you're back, and I lost track of thought about what I was talking about.
You're doing the passing heavy.
Oh, yeah. So 12 personnel. So, really getting back to pounding the rock. And I know that it's what they really wanted to do last week, but, again, they couldn't establish the run. But if you get that running game going, Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders, and you're able to establish a consistent running game, that's obviously going to help out your play-action game and Sean Jackson in the deep ball.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, one thing that's tough is we were just down. So we've been down so quickly that, like you said, we had to alter our game plans. It's really tough to, have just to get those 3-4 yards consistently with Jordan Howard when you're already down 3 scores, essentially. So, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I know they want to establish an identity. We haven't – our offensive line, like Brendan said, I mean, hasn't been as – we see flashes of what we expected to be, but it hasn't been consistent yet this season. Maybe, it will get there, but right now it's a little bit worrisome. And now with Jason Peters, I mean, we have Andre Dillard, who started off a little bit shaky, but I thought he kind of found his footing towards his end. But now it's a big test. He has the full week of practice. So, I mean, we want to see him establish the identity with a run. I want to see Miles Sanders get more than 3 carries. His receiving threat, him being a receiving threat, makes him a dynamic person to have on the field, which we desperately need. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, I guess, how we go going forward. But I definitely agree that 12 personnel should help out with Goddard's blocking ability.
Without a question, and I think if I'm going to give some silver lining to that Vikings game, the fact that the Eagles had 4.9 yards per rush, that's something I give a little bit of silver lining with. The problem is when you are having Kirk Cousins on the other end, and Kirk Cousins is averaging over 12 yards or almost 12 yards of pass, you can't put the run game on the field as much. And then what naturally happens is now you let guys like Hunter and Griffin, Adrian, we talked about this last week, 2 of the better defensive ends in the NFL, they'll mess your whole game plan up. And, when you give up those big explosive plays, all of a sudden the run game becomes an afterthought on the offense. And that really played into what the Vikings' strengths was in those 2 good defensive ends.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the carrots. Let's talk about them. How about them carrots? The Cowboys. All right. So they're dealing with a lot of injuries right now. And Cowboys fans, they're complaining. They're the excuses. They're lining up. Let me tell you something, all right? The Eagles won a Super Bowl with backups. I don't want to hear it, all right? Next. Thank you, next, as Ariana would say. Tyron Smith, high ankle sprain. I'm never saying her name again on the show. La'el Collins, knee injury. Amari Cooper might not play. Byron Jones has a hamstring injury. All these guys on the injured basically didn't practice today, I should say. If these guys don't play, I think the Eagles can win this game, obviously.
We talked a little bit about more pre-show, but I mean the defensive line, especially Fletcher Cox, has not been the man we expect. But with their defensive line, their offensive line is banged up as they have been. There's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be able to, get to Jim Schwartz's main philosophy with generating pressure through our front 4. So, I mean, that's something that we have going for us. I mean, if we get Darby back, if we get Mills back on top of being able to pressure the quarterback with our front 4, I mean, that would be something that would be huge in our favor.
Look, you show me a healthy team in week 6 in the NFL, and I'll show you a team who's had 6 bye weeks. You just don't get it. You don't get healthy players. You don't get healthy teams this time of the year. The Cowboys certainly have a large amount of players, Adrian, as you rattled off there, did not practice. So do the Eagles. So does every other NFL team. Skolsky, you nailed this a couple weeks ago, and I think it's so important to remind people. This is why drafting players in the middle rounds matter so much, to be able to give you those Band-Aids for 2 to 3 weeks when your players are hurt, because it happens. And that's why I think the belief was, well, Nelson Aguilar or J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, they could be the vertical stretch guys for when D-Jax gets hurt. Didn't happen that way. There wasn't that Band-Aid there. Adrian, you're right, though. When you talk about it, and Skolsky, you talk about it too, the fact that the Cowboys' offensive line, is largely banged up, this has to be looked at as an opportunity to feast for the Eagles' defensive line. Has to. This is an absolute statement opportunity to get it done. But Adrian, I'll tell you this: if this was a 1:00 game, I would be a lot more confident this is an Eagles win, because it's a Sunday nighter. I know it's only a couple hours difference, but hey, it obviously gives both teams a little more time to get healthy.
It's a good little point there, little nugget there. I will say this, and your point about drafting is so spot on, because if you remember, the Cowboys' offensive line was healthy for like 3, 4, 5 years straight. They never had depth, but they always stayed healthy. And now that they can't stay healthy, that lack of depth is being exposed. So Cowboys fans, you can complain, but take your complaints to the GM and who's drafting these players.
Yeah, Amari Cooper, you saw their offense last year with and without him. It was almost night
massive.
And day. It was a massive difference.
If he doesn't play, I'm very confident that the Eagles are going to win.
I think that's a big difference maker, especially the way our secondary has been playing, especially against top tier wideouts like Amari. If he's there, it's obviously a huge advantage. If not, that just plays again into our hands, just like the weakened offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Selfishly, as someone who has Amari Cooper on their fantasy team, I'm obviously hoping he does play. But isn't that the great and the terrible thing about fantasy football? It makes us all situational fans.
Well, you're a Ravens fan anyway, so it's okay.
No, but look at this.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, look at this here. Randall Cobb did not practice today with a back situation. Amari Cooper did not practice today with an ankle and quad. Michael Gallup limited in practice with a knee today, and he didn't exactly look 100% fresh in the Jets game. Those are the 3 biggest receiving threats for the Cowboys. Even if Cooper's only 50%, this is huge. But man, Amari Cooper, he really can screw up the Eagles defense by himself, honestly, fellas.
And I know this is one of the most tired discussions between Eagles fans and Cowboys fans, but I think this is the difference between Dak Prescott and Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, his offense is banged up, but with his talent, he's able to, keep the offense going and put up respectable amount of points. Where Dak, he's obviously a very, very talented quarterback, but I don't think he's good enough to overcome lack of talent around him, as with the guys like, Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and guys like that.
All right, so Cowboys obviously 3-3, 3 straight losses after those 3 straight wins against the Cupcakes. So they played Alabama State 3 times and they picked up 3 wins. But the last 3 weeks haven't been as easy. And Dallas, they were raving about Kellen Moore in the offense and the scheme. But in recent weeks, it's been a lot more conservative. Now, that's because of the mini carrot. That's why he's got marbles. He's not letting Kellen do his thing. He wants to be conservative. And the thing that I saw last week, third down after third down, they're throwing short of the sticks. It's ridiculous. And it's the Jets. I know they have a good defense, but come on, you're down all those points in the game, and you're being ultra conservative. So in a lot of ways, the Cowboys are a little bit like the Eagles right now. They're starting off slow. They're coming in a little bit cold. But what are your thoughts on, what the Cowboys are right now?
First, I think the genius word gets thrown around a little too quickly in the NFL. They crowned Kellen Moore a genius after 3 games.
Yeah. Who was it? The Giants, Redskins, and the Dolphins, right? Those 3 were the first 3?
Yep.
So not saying he's not good, but I'm saying maybe let him have a full season before we start saying genius.
Those were 3 bye weeks to start the season.
Even Sean McVay, obviously very talented, but they're talking about he completely revolutionized the offense. I don't know about you guys, but the Rams' offense has been pretty flat this year and pretty disappointing ever since the Super Bowl. So, I mean, maybe we should give more than a season or two before we start saying this guy's a genius and an NFL revolutionary. Like they hype up these guys. Oh, this guy's the next Belichick. Belichick's there because he's done it over a long period of time. Let's let these other guys. Let's let it play out before we start using the G word. Sorry, would you want to say something?
No, I just think it's interesting to talk about Kellen Moore. I mean, I just think it's cool. I think he's got a really unique backstory because he was the guy that originally was Dak Prescott's backup quarterback. And then all of a sudden he goes to be an assistant coach. Then he's Dak's quarterback's coach. And now he's the offensive coordinator. That's a fast rise. And that's got to be kind of awkward in that quarterback room to Dak look at him. And when Kellen's telling him, oh, that ball was thrown, a ball should have been thrown here. And Dak's got to look at him and be like, you couldn't make that throw 4 years ago, and that's why you were my backup, and now you're my boss. It's a weird situation there. So, Skolsky, you're right. Let's kind of temper all expectations, but I will give every team in the NFL is going to have a crappy week. And let's be fair to Dallas here. I think, honestly, when you looked at that team, they looked flat against the Jets. They looked like they just rolled out of bed, like they gave zero respect to Flume, and they thought they were going to cakewalk them, and they didn't. And you know what? Eagles have done that. Patriots have done that. Insert NFL team here. Every NFL team has done that. So I'm not going to be the guy who's going to LOL, point at the Cowboys and say, how'd you lose to the Jets? Because this is the Jets with Sam Darnold, who, to be fair, Eagles didn't play Sam Darnold. I'm not saying they would have lost to the Jets. Let's not get it twisted here. But I'm saying this is not the same Jets team. So it's not apples to apples in this game here. The Cowboys are what they thought you were. Their team is going to run the ball heavy. They're going to try to beat you up, and then they're going to try to make Amari Cooper beat you over the top once they get one-on-one situations. They play it very simple here. So I know they play very vanilla, Adrian. That's something we talked about. But you know what? When you invest that much money in Ezekiel Elliott, that's what you've invested in. You've invested in being vanilla. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, and they're running the ball a lot on first down. And please run the ball. I beg you, Dallas, to run the ball. I begged Minnesota to run the ball, and they only ran it for 3.5 yards per carry. But Kirk Cousins did his thing, so that was that.
Right.
So, but in this game, I want to get back to the Eagles' offense and what's that?
I kind of pivoted the conversation about the genius thing, but go ahead. Sorry.
It's okay. No, it's okay. You know what kind of happened was in the Super Bowl, the Patriots, if you remember, they were like shifting their defense with less than 15 seconds on the clock because Sean McVay could no longer talk to Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff is a moron, and that this is the reason why they're struggling. No, I'm just kidding, but like somewhat of the reason. I'll have to look at the tape and see if like defenses are actually doing that. But
their offensive line is terrible.
No, it is. No, and their offensive line last year was really good. So they lost some players. But anyway, what I wanted to get to. So Cowboys got a great defense, obviously, but they got a fast defense, and it's a little light. So the key to beating their defense is to check out that Green Bay game from a couple weeks ago. You run the football. And I'm thinking this Dallas game, lots of inside zone, lots of Jordan Howard, lots of runs up the middle. I think that is going to be the recipe to beat the Cowboys on Sunday.
I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure DeMarcus Lawrence has 0 sacks against Lane Johnson.
I think that is correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. I mean, obviously, he's one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. So to have Lane Johnson over there can continue to stonewall him, I mean, that's something. If Andre Dillard needs help, I mean, that's that would be huge. But obviously, again, the running game would be big. I mean, we have Thunder with Jordan Howard. We have Lightning with Miles Sanders. I would like to see this be a week where we get Miles Sanders more. Actually, we've seen him be actually way better than expected in the receiving game. It's kind of like the opposite of what his draft profile was. We were pretty confident in him as a runner, but we didn't see him used as a receiver a lot. And at Penn State and here with the Eagles, he's arguably our second best receiver after Alshon.
Yep.
So I mean, it's been kind of weird. So I mean, if he can live up to his potential in the running game, I mean, that'd be huge. I mean, like I said, you can pound the rock with Jordan, and then you can get the elusive guy there with Miles Sanders. They complement each other really well, and that's really the way to attack this Dallas defense.
Next 5 defenses: Cowboys, Bills, Bears, Patriots, Seahawks. It's tough sledding. That's tough sledding here, fellas. So, you're going to have to stay committed to the run game. You know what? To be honest with you, even if they average less than 4 yards a carry and it's like in the low 3s, you still have to run the ball. And it's not necessarily you have to run the ball to gain yards. That's obviously the goal, right? But you run the ball to try to make sure those defensive ends aren't able to fly upfield because they know it's an obvious passing down situation. So I think you have to run the football, even if it's not successful, because I think the Cowboys have the best tandem of linebackers in the NFL. So even if it's not successful here, don't get frustrated. Don't say, why the hell are we running the ball? You're running the ball because you're trying to make sure Carson Wentz, when he does go play action and does pass, you have an extra second of delay on those defensive ends coming downfield.
All right, well, let's segue into the Eagles linebackers because obviously there was a cut and a release in Zach Brown. So where do the Eagles kind of go here? Because Nigel Bradham might not play. Now, thing to keep in mind, because there were some Eagles fans who were freaking out about this cut, like, oh my God, they don't have any linebackers. First thing, Zach Brown was atrocious this year. Absolutely abysmal. All right, so take away what he actually said about Kirk Cousins, and if you actually watch his play on the field, he was terrible. Bad. Really bad. That's like really bad, like Donald Trump bad. So, Kamu Grugier-Hill, I actually kind of like him. I think he's kind of an ascending player. He goes sideline to sideline really well. So, if Nigel Bradham can't play, you'll have him and Nate Jerry. Also, look out. Maybe T.J. Edwards starts to get some more snaps. You got Duke Riley, who you acquired from the Falcons. So, I don't think they're done at linebacker.
Yeah, they just promoted Alex Singleton from the practice.
There you go. And I loved Alex Singleton in the preseason.
Canadian, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sad thing is apparently the Eagles were between Brown and Jamie Collins, and they chose Brown. And Jamie Collins is having a hell of a year right now.
But he also had a terrible year in Cleveland the year before Skolsky. So I'm not gonna say like that would have been a surefire thing.
Oh no. Like,
well, to be honest, Collins probably wanted to go to New England anyway.
Yeah, I will say it's different.
Where he has
different schemes as well. So I mean,
it's
not night and day, but just it's like
the thought of that. The thought of that. Yeah. Oh my God, we could have had Jamie Collins. Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, linebacker. If I had to list problems with the defense, linebacker play probably is at the bottom of it. I mean, we run in today's NFL, and especially the Eagles, we run out of nickel about 90% of the time. We only have two linebacks in there. Grugier-Hill's healthy, and he's looking more than serviceable. Nate Jerry stepped up quite a bit in pass coverage so far this year.
Yeah,
and they must really like those younger guys that they've seen. I mean, they kept T.J. Edwards, undrafted free agent, who I actually liked in the draft. I was kind of surprised to see him go undrafted.
Same.
I mean, he's survived numerous cuts and numerous shakeups at linebacker. He beat out. They cut L.J. Fort and kept him on. They cut Brown now, so it's interesting. They must be very high on him. They must. I mean, and obviously they make the deal for Duke Riley. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see. But our run game hasn't been an issue. So and Brown wasn't a coverage linebacker, so I don't think that's going to really affect us there. So I mean.
If anything, I think they actually upgraded by cutting him because all he could do was stop the run, and when you looked at him in coverage, he was terrible. And if you looked at any run that went wide, the running back would easily get past him. It happened again on Sunday.
Yeah, really good stat that kind of solidifies this, fellas. I want both of you guys to take a guess at it. If you had to take a guess, what percent of snaps do you think Zach Brown had played in his career with the Eagles? And obviously, people in the chat section, go ahead and take a guess too.
54%.
40%.
20%.
Wow.
20%. And now, granted,
there are Eagles fans who are freaking out about this.
This is according to Pro Football Reference. So, if you don't believe me, check it out there.
Yeah,
I just did the average here.
That's crazy. Yeah, and whenever he was on, he stunk.
And against Atlanta, that was his high, and he only played 38% of the snaps there. So, that's one of those things where it's like, I get it. You bring a guy in, he was supposed to be a starter, and you cut him. And actually, people are like, oh, well, he talked a big game, didn't back it up, he gets cut. Okay, that's why. All right. Maybe the fact that he was a very expendable player. I mean, you only play 20% of your snaps. It's completely forgettable. And Skolsky, you talked about it. You brought in Duke Riley. I don't think that's a coincidence there, So I'm putting 2 and 2 together. Nigel, Adrian, you talked about some healthy guys at linebacker coming back. It makes it very expendable in the end of the day. And Adrian, I like the fact that you talked about how this was a statement cut. I don't think it was a statement cut for what he said. I think it's a statement cut for saying everyone's expendable here. We are talking a big game, and no one is backing it up. He just happened to be the easiest guy to go.
Oh, I agree with that's why I think they did it. I agree with that. No, I agree with that. But I think his statement was the cherry on the top, which all right, he's the guy.
Sure.
We're getting rid of him.
He's a fringe player who's making headlines. We don't need that.
Yeah.
I think it was more coincidence. I think it's mostly on the field stuff.
I agree.
It makes an interesting story.
I think it was an intentional statement cut because it makes me look smart because that's what I said on the recap right after the game. I said, somebody needs to get cut after this game. And then somebody did. Actually, I didn't even say it. Philly 500 did. But it was on my show. So I still take credit for it. All right. Predictions time. Predictions. Cowboys right now are 3-point favorites. Now, there's a Vegas tip that I've learned. If the public bets over 80% on one particular team go the other way. Well, this number I saw yesterday, 95% of the public is on the Eagles. That's interesting.
And Adrian, let me kind of hop in here. The reason that number is set that way and that 80% that Adrian talked about is because Vegas wants to win money no matter what happens. If anyone's ever been out here, there's a reason those buildings are so tall. It's not because you guys all think you're perfect bettors. It's because Vegas knows how to play the line the perfect way that they win money on either side of it. I'm sorry to cut you off, Adrian. I just want to kind of include that a little bit.
No, I love that bit there. So, yes. And I was done anyway.
Are you doing predictions or?
Yeah, predictions. Yeah. I was letting you guys go, and then I was going to go.
Okay. I'm on the fence here. I mean, both teams are kind of in a similar situation where they're both they're 500. I mean, they had higher expectations. They have injuries, and they're kind of struggling to find an identity. I hate to use injuries as an excuse, but I think Amari Cooper is the difference in this who I would pick. I think if he's healthy, I'm going to pick the Cowboys, unfortunately, and if he's not, I'm going to pick the Eagles. I mean, I think it's going to be around 27-20, depending on Cooper or no Cooper. I think that's who I picked to win, essentially, with that score.
Well, as someone who lives in Las Vegas, literally, I know this is not a hyperbole. It's a statement of fact. I live in Las Vegas. If I'm watching this at the Caesar Sportsbook, I'm literally going to sit right in front of the sports counter because exactly what Skolsky said. And I'm going to wait until I get the notification one way or another. And as soon as I get the notification, I'll put the money on the Eagles. I'll put the money on the Cowboys. Not necessarily because I think Amari Cooper is the best receiver in the NFL, but because I think he is going to highlight the biggest issue of the Eagles.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with everything you said. I'm going to actually take the Cowboys in this one, fellas. And the reason I'm taking it is because of what I teased earlier. I think the fact that it's a Sunday nighter gives him a little more time to get healthy. And the fact that he went out so quick against the Jets, I don't see this as being a long-term thing. So to me, I'll take the Cowboys here, but I would take the money line. I would take the Eagles to cover, but I'll take the Cowboys in the win.
Okay. All right. I don't like the fact that only 5% are on the Cowboys. Now, obviously, the public not on the Cowboys because they saw them lose to the Jets, and they're just like, oh, they're terrible. Jets are bad. How could you lose to the Jets? And now the public is all off on the Cowboys. So, it would just make my year if the Cowboys won this game. Just would make my year. Just be great. Absolutely great. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Doug guaranteed it, and I'm guaranteeing it. Eagles going into Little D. They're going to take down the mini carrot, and they're going to win this football game. And I got the same score as Skolsky. This is the second time we agreed this year on a score. 27-20. Eagles win. Dak Prescott can't get the job done at the end. So there is that. So, all right. Now, you want to take some questions, guys? You want to see if
yeah, we got some time.
Sure, we can go for it.
All right. Let's see if I can find anything because I know somebody. I know my man LT. He gave us a lovely $9.99 donation. Really appreciate that. I'm trying to find.
Appreciate it, homie.
What's that?
Appreciate that, homie.
Yes, sir. Okay, so he was asking, like, with the trade deadline, should the Eagles go after a receiver or a DB? Should they go after a receiver as opposed to a DB?
Go ahead, Skolsky.
Why not both? I mean, I think we should go. I think I would give up higher compensation because I want a definite starting caliber. Potentially number one. cornerback like Patrick Peterson, Chris Harris, or something like that. But I mean, receiver, I mean, I would call around Dolphins, Devontae Parker, Adrian Wilson. I mean, just guys that are not special teamers like Matt Collins, just someone that give us some depth, someone that gives us some potential explosiveness, just someone that defenses have to respect. I mean, I'm not against going against an AJ Green or Robbie Anderson. Obviously, I would love Robbie Anderson. I just don't know what the compensation would be. But there's no reason, since we're not giving up 2 firsts and a fourth for Jalen Ramsey, we can't give up with, I think we are slated for 10 or 11 picks this next draft, and we can't package some of those middle rounders and get some help for our immediate needs now.
No disagreements here. I mean, I've always said when we talked about it with Jalen Ramsey, I was never on board with it because of how high the expense would have been to go and get him, right? And then on top of the fact that you would have had to pay him probably $100 million, and that's not good for the cap to have 3 guys on your roster that are over 100 mil. That's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. So I've always been more on the value side, like Skolsky. You talked about Pat P, talked about Harris there. Fast Albert down in Miami, Albert Wilson. Yeah, he can run straight, so he definitely would check the boxes there and probably wouldn't be a real expensive cost and could fit that Deshaun Jackson, mold type of guy. I've always said this: if you're going to mortgage and you're going to make a big move, go get Von Miller. That's the player I would give up 2 ones for because I still think he's going to be Von Miller in the next 6 years. And defensive end, I've said, is the bigger issue, and pass rush is the bigger issue than defensive backs. I think receivers is a problem, but I would prioritize that third. I would say defensive end is the biggest priority, defensive backs, and then receivers would be my third biggest need.
Or even interior defensive line, yeah.
Where I'm at right now is like maybe adding like not mediocre players, but like average players, guys maybe who are okay. Like Devontae Parker was the guy that you mentioned. If you go to Miami, you can hit him up for 2 players. You can go, hey, let's get Devontae, let's get Xavier and Howard too. And I would do something like that because I think Howard's on the last year of his rookie deal.
They just re-signed him.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they signed him at the start of the year. They won't move him.
Oh, they did that to start the year. I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
Well, how much did he sign for?
He was a pretty hefty one. I don't think Miami's going to sign and trade.
Well, then that's my fault because I should have known that information.
That's okay. It's Miami Dolphins. We don't talk about them until it's draft.
Yeah. I should have known that information, though. My bad. But Chris Harris and Pat P, those are 2 guys that we've been mentioning. But Devontae Parker, Robbie Anderson, I like those names as well.
And don't forget, I mean, Howie Roseman always seems to pull a name out of his hat. There's always names in the rumor mill. And then, who would have thought Jay Ajayi was available in 2017?
Golden Tate.
Who thought Golden Tate was available? Before that, who thought Michael Bennett was available? I mean, obviously Golden Tate didn't work out, but I mean, these are names that aren't in the mainstream rumor mill that Howie's calling, he's definitely making calls and inquiring about. So don't be surprised if it's a name that, we're not even like considering that they're even available that ends up on our team in within this next couple of weeks. Because I mean, Howie's not someone that just goes after those low hanging fruits. He'll make the calls. And then, I mean, look at the compensation we gave up. The only one that was actually surprising compensation was Tate, but we only gave up a 5th for Bennett, and we only gave up a 4th for Jay Ajayi. And if you would have told me back then that Jay Ajayi, I bet you there's a lot of teams that are probably like, we could have got Jay Ajayi for only a 4th round pick, like a day 3 pick. I mean, there's probably a lot of teams kicking themselves.
Yeah. Geno Atkins. That's the player.
I brought that up.
Another one you said,
yeah. You brought that up early in the year, and I loved it. I've loved it ever since, especially now with the injuries. That is the under the radar player that nobody's thinking about. That could help this team defensively because he's going to get you pass rush through the middle.
Sure.
So there's that. All right. So that was a $9.99 donation from LT. He says, thanks for the fair, unbiased analysis. Fly, Eagles, fly. And then we also had a $5 donation from That Average Kayaker. I'm sure you're not an average kayaker. You're probably a better kayaker than me. Yeah, so he goes, EDP has actually lost his mind. I've actually been talking to EDP all week, and I'm trying to calm him down. It's really tough. He's hanging on the edge, but I'm talking him off the cliff. So,
I mean, that was a frustrating game. There's nothing we could do. They just, our defense was just consistently getting torched. I mean, Diggs dropped another wide open. He should have had an additional touchdown. So it was really rough to watch. And I mean, I understand why a lot of guys are frustrated out there, and a lot of people are looking for someone to blame. I see a bunch of fire grow, which I mean, maybe we don't know. I don't really know the whole dynamic of their offense, but I mean, a lot of people want answers because we wanted to win the Super Bowl this year, and things are looking a little shaky right now. So I understand that.
Someone's asking the Panzer one. Do we still have faith in JJ Arcega-Whiteside?
Yeah, he's a rookie. It's fine. It's taking a while to develop. I mean, it sucks, yeah, but he's a rookie. Give him time.
I think Brendan's right there. I mean, it sucks. We wanted him to come in and step in, especially with Deshaun out. We expected, why isn't JJ out there instead of Matt Collins? But Doug Peterson pretty much said, as long as Alshon's healthy, don't expect to see too many snaps for Arcega-Whiteside. But to give up on a rookie this early, would be just completely ridiculous. I mean, it just sometimes takes longer. I mean, I know it sucks. You see DK Metcalf, McLaurin, lighting it up. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, some guys just take longer than the others. That doesn't mean he's a bust.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think is going on here. Is there are so many impact receivers, rookie receivers this year that it's highlighting this and his struggles. Even Hollywood Brown with Baltimore's have a solid year. So sometimes for these receivers it can take a little time. And Alshon is the back shoulder guy. So when they made this pick, I liked Arcega-Whiteside as a player, but I wasn't sure if it was a fit per se at the time because I thought he was the same player as Alshon. Now you could say, hey, you could just take over for him when that time is right, which is true. But that was that. Now here's the next question from. Oh man, I had a good question. A lot of people are asking questions. You guys talk about Cooper most of the time, but Zeke has been the killer for the Eagles in every game he plays against the Eagles. What can you guys do to stop him? Ask. Sorry if I butcher this name. Cy Bothro.
I mean, our run defense, we just stopped Dalvin Cook for the most part. We held him under 4 yards a carry. I mean, obviously, Zeke's a threat to go off. He's one of the best running backs in the league. But, I mean, I'd be more worried about our pass defense than our rush defense. I mean, Zeke's going to get his yards. But, I mean, at the end of the day, our pass defense is going to make or break this game.
In short, you pray Cooper doesn't play so you can play a lot of single high safety. That's the simplest thing.
There you go. And just to rattle off the numbers that he has in his career against Philadelphia, 24 attempts a game, 115.8 yards, 4.82 yards per carry. So a good games there for Zeke against the Eagles, I should say. Correct comment there. He has been good against the Eagles. But Cooper is the worry more so than Zeke, which is kind of crazy to say. But, that's how bad the Eagles secondary has been. So there's that. Do we still have faith in Sidney Jones? Ask Juan Garcia.
I mean, as someone that was banging the drum for us to take him in the second round, it was ecstatic in the second round. I mean, he's running. I'll say he's running out. He's running out of time, I'm running out of patience. One, it's whether he'll ever stay healthy, because that's a major doubt. But I mean, his big thing out of college was instincts, more than his just physical ability. He's supposed to be the most instinctive corner in the league. I mean, in the draft. And that just hasn't been there in the NFL yet. He's making mistakes, and he looks lost out there sometimes. I mean, secondary, being a corner is one of the hardest positions in the NFL. So I'm not going to say he's completely lost, but it's not looking good. I'll say that.
Here's a simple answer, Juan. Flip a coin. And when the coin's in the air, you'll know your answer, because I don't think any of us can give you a definitive answer one way or another, truthfully.
Well, 99% of Philadelphia say he's a bust right now. So that's that, but you talked about his instincts, and that's something that I'm noticing right now. He's not trusting his instincts. He's not trusting his eyes or trusting anything out there. The other thing is this. When he came out of Washington, he was a press man guy, and there's a lot of zone here. So it's kind of a schematic change. How much of that makes a difference here, Brendan? Like if he goes to a man-to-man scheme, yeah, like Detroit per se. Yeah, I think that makes a difference here.
I mean, I'll use another guy that actually just got traded with Marcus Peters. I thought Marcus Peters, he's a trick-or-treat corner, right? He'll get you an interception, but then he'll also be looking the other way as a receiver, butt naked open on a touchdown, right? So I think he's a good guy. He plays off. He probably would have been a better fit in Philadelphia, and then he plays in a situation in the Rams, and the Rams want to have a little more physicality. That wasn't his cup of tea. As a defensive back, it matters a lot. It really does, Adrian.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any final thoughts here? As we're 50 minutes in.
If there's ever a time we talk about the bang-up offensive line, let's see Josh Sweat step up. Let's see Fletcher Cox get that. I'll let you say deep penetration.
Deep penetration. There we go.
There we go. All right, now that's over with. Let's see some of these young guys step up. Let's see Miles Sanders get it going on the ground game. Let's see some breakout. We need some people to step up. Regardless, let's get some outside help. But we're going nowhere unless we see, some of these young guys take this next step.
Because I saw someone ask this, and I'm going to give this as an answer, as my closing statement. For the Eagles to win, Nelson Aguilar's got to play big. I think that's going to be really, really important. He doesn't have to be the guy who can take the top off, but he at least has to keep you honest. And on the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go Barnett. Skolsky, you stole mine in Sweat, but I'm going to go on the other defensive end. I know we know what we got in Brandon Graham. You have to get after him. I mean, it's as simple as it is here. You just have to be aggressive here.
His first round pick.
Yeah.
You got it.
Big time. Yep.
All right, before I give my final thought, Kevin Cronin, I think, really wants this question answered because he's asked it 3 times. Does Alex Singleton play on Sunday night? Must be from Canada. Must be a big Alex Singleton fan. I don't think he's going to play on Sunday night, but if guys get hurt, he might play.
Special teams, he'll be there out there and kickoffs and all that.
He'll cover something.
He's a thumper though.
No, that's true.
He's a thumper though. Maybe who knows? I mean, Jake Elliott kicks a touchback 99% of the time, but who knows? Maybe he'll lay the lumber out.
Yeah,
Canadian lumberjack. We'll see.
All right, my final thought is this: Philadelphia, you need to learn how to think for yourselves. Okay, the reason why I say this, we love to piggyback on stuff that the media says, and right now, we're all on Howie Roseman. At this point in time last year, I was saying that I didn't like Howie Roseman's offseason. And all you guys got on me. You guys were calling like oh, you're so disrespectful. He just won you a Super Bowl. All these things. And now I'm seeing these things this week because Bleeding Green Nation wrote one article. They wrote one article about Howie Roseman not being able to draft well. And all of a sudden, now he's a terrible GM. He's a terrible GM. Whereas last year I said I was disappointed in the offseason and I got ridiculed. I got chastised. But now, because they lose to the Vikings and now we're 2 years removed, now he stinks. Think for yourselves, Philadelphia. Don't take an article and take every word from it and just use that as your thought. Come up with your own thoughts, damn it. That's what I do. That's how I keep it unbiased here on the Bitter Birds. That's what I wanted to say. That's it.
I mean, yeah, there's certainly questions with his drafting ability. But I mean, his trading and signing I have no worries about. But it's the drafting that's going to come back. If there's anything that's going to come back and kill us, it's going to be a drafting. So this is a good draft. Like I said, we have double digits draft picks. We'll see what they turn into, whether they're veterans through trade or we're filling out a roster. But we got to start nailing those middle round picks.
When I said he struggled with draft picks last year too, I was getting chastised. But listen.
But I mean, give him credit for finding diamonds in the rough, like Patrick Robinson during the Super Bowl year, and finding guys like Craven LeBlanc last year. I mean, he has, like I said, the trades and stuff I'm not worried about, but the draft, which is arguably the biggest of all of them, is what we need to. We're kind of on uneasy ground with him.
Yeah. It's the drafting for sure. And to be honest with you, I think it's funny because it's not even Howie that was drafting, it was Joe Douglas. So all these people who are complaining about Howie really should be complaining about Joe. So
look, there's 2 different schools of thoughts when you come to GMs. You have your Ozzie Newsomes, the guys who want to stockpile picks because they maybe have a little bit better history of drafting, or you have your guys like the Bill Belichick's of the world who aren't great at drafting and they end up trading for a lot of known camaraderies. I think that's probably more of how Howie is. He's more of the guy of trading for a known player. But in the end of the day, you got to have a little bit of both to be successful long term.
Long term for sure.
All right, I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to kind of have a little rant on that because I just think it's so funny how all of a sudden Howie Roseman is getting ridiculed because of one article by Bleeding Green Nation, whereas last year, nothing. Nothing. He had his dick sucked all year long. That's what happened.
Hey,
All right,
you win the Super Bowl, you get your dick sucked for a year. That's fair enough.
Yeah, well, well, when you're unbiased here and you're a bitter bird, you don't let anybody get his dick sucked. Nobody. I don't suck any dick.
What a way to start! What a way to start the stream! What a way to end it, man.
That's how. Well, we're ending it now. We're ending it now because everyone has left the stream. we're leaving. That's Mike Skolsky. That's Brennan Albert. You guys are probably not coming back next week because of those remarks. That's okay. I'll find somebody else. I'm Adrian Fedke. We're out of here.
Appreciate it, guys.
See you guys.
Keith with the best ending comment here. You guys were great. Thanks so